depending on the age, they're going to want to just be whatever kind of kid they want to be. So when they're really little, they are going to handle it in very childlike ways, and as parents, I think you have to think in terms of they're not little adults. They are, fives and sixes, and the way they're going to behave is the way most fives and sixes are going to want to behave. And at the same time, when they're facing an illness like this, which is not normal for a 5 or a 6, they'll want to deal with that in a way a 5 or 6-year-old would also deal with it. And that means play and drawing and just having fun with it and figuring out how to deal with this thing that's come into their lives. As the kids get older, wherever they are developmentally, they'll deal with it in those ways, and it can change as they go along. And so a child that might be have resolved in dealing with, say, diabetes at the age of 5 could have a very different experience of that at 8 or 10, and certainly once they become a teenager. One of the things we talk about with parents is how, especially in the teenage years, children may use, not consciously necessarily use, but may have great difficulty with the illness because it makes them so different from their friends, and really changes the way development should be moving. So instead of moving out of the home and getting independent, they actually feel more dependent on their parents than any of their friends. And they're wondering, why do they have to do this? And they have more complex understandings of the world, so that illness can suddenly, which before was just something they dealt with, all of a sudden seems like this incredibly, it's just painful to have to go through all these procedures to deal with it, really messing up their life, and can rebel against the parents with that too. And I think the parents just need to understand that. Understand that with any illness, significant medical illness, it's going to kind of flip development upside down to where parents are in parenting roles a lot longer than they normally would be, and teens wind up, or children in general, wind up feeling more dependent. And one of the things we didn't get to say downstairs, but we try to really be clear with parents and kids about, is it's not them. This is an illness they're dealing with, and so to separate out the effects of that illness and what that does to a family, what that does to an individual from the person. So if Johnny or Susie have diabetes, there are times when they will act very strangely, and sometimes that's just them being normal kids, and sometimes it's the illness. And sometimes when people are irritable, it's because they didn't get their way, but sometimes that's because they're just frustrated with the illness. And so to be clear about what part of this is dealing with the illness and what part of it is just normal sort of life. I was listening to an interview with the guy who's going to be in the Boston Marathon.
Oh, I heard that. Yeah, I heard it too.
The South African who's won in the wheelchair division for 9 times, and he's now going for his 10th, and no one's even ever been close to him in number of times. But when he was born without legs. And his parents were told by the doc, you might as well institutionalize this kid because he's never going to be able to do much. And now he's known internationally, and goes around and gives talks to people to encourage them that this doesn't have to define who you are. There are still possibilities in life even facing something like this. So I have had people as adults come back to me, because I'll see very often folks from when they're kids on all the way through into adulthood. Not all the time, but they'll come back periodically, and I've had any number of people tell me, for instance, with cancer is the best thing that ever happened to me. And not because they really liked going through chemo or anything like that, but that it really gave them a different sense about what life was about. And for that gentleman, I think his name was Van Zink or something like that, with the wheelchair, he said it really gave him a sense of purpose, and he discovered through his disability how he could affect others' lives, and it had made such a difference for him. So.